and gentlemen, welcome to the PGA Draft Cast, brought to you by WinDailySports.com. Just a quick reminder that WinDaily Sports doesn't just cover golf. They cover the NFL, the NHL, MLB, NBA, soccer, MMA, NASCAR, you name the sport. WinDaily Sports has projection models, optimizers, articles, and our famous Discord chat to cover it all. Now, if you click the promo link below and you type in Win Big or Green, you will get 1 week free of WinDaily. And then after that, it is just $5.99 per week for all of that, including some of our betting content. Now, let's get to the PGA DraftCast, where we have proven track records with Joel, Spencer, David, and myself. Let's have some fun. Get in the chat. Make sure you subscribe to the page, and make sure you hit the like button. Let's do this snake draft. Let's do the PGA DraftCast. Let's do it right now.
PGA Nation and Zach Jeffers, we are back, and we are back with another very big week. The FedEx Cup is here, and we're going to have our work cut out for us tonight because 70 players for DraftKings is plenty, right? You build your lineups, plenty of options, plenty of ways to get different. But for 4 teams, the draft with only 70 players that all have to be unique, we're going to run into some challenges tonight on the show. It's going to be fun, but we have our work cut out for us. See, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm still mad at Alex Smalley. You know, we have a group text, and I was really looking good to do well in some bigger tournaments if he had made the cut. He missed it on the number. The putter just, I guess that was the main thing that didn't work out for him. But other than that, I'm doing well. I think we should have a segment where we just get to talk about who we're mad at from the previous week, and it's Alex Smalley for me. Great golfer. It's not last week. Oh, is Joel frozen? Oh, no, he's not frozen.
I was, but I'm back.
Oh, okay. I thought that was your Alex Smalley face. Like, yeah, I'm mad too. I don't know if you had him.
Well, I missed most of what you said, but I did hear that you're mad at Alex Smalley. So yes. I got the gist of it, and it's fair enough. I mean, a lot to be mad about. He finds his ways to disappoint you in the worst, most opportune times. But we'll see if you go back to the well this week. He is a value option that is still to be considered. So to be determined. Spence, how you doing tonight?
So I am mad at a player that I am mad at almost every single week that I play DraftKings or I bet on. I am mad at Alex Noren here. Now, I know Noren made the cut, and I'm less mad at him for that reason, and actually was profitable on the wagers that I placed on him, but he imploded down the stretch. He missed a 4-foot putt on 17. All of that put him into this weird chop zone that he had, where it ended up being a break-even bet inside the top 40 wager that I had, but I thought I was finally going to be profitable, like over 2 units of profit on Noren, because I did have him against Shank, so I hit that bet, but I don't know. Alex Noren and I are in a love-hate relationship with one another.
Well, Alex Noren this week was an absolute roller coaster of emotions because he started off day one. And I saw your tweet and you're like, I'm done with Alex Noren. It's over. And then it turned. And then he was like, by day 3, you're like, oh, listen, Alex Noren's back. Like, I'm all over Alex Noren. And then on Sunday, he got disappointed again. So, I mean, in fairness, that has been Alex Noren's career. It's just a couple spots where you're like, oh, I love you. And then he lets you down more often than not. So it's nothing out of the ordinary, but I was riding that with you. I played a ton of him in DFS last week. You know, I was super happy after he turned it around. And then I was like, back to mediocrity. What's up, David? How you doing tonight?
I'm good. And I'm going to not participate in the golfers I'm mad at segment because I had Brennan Todd in 7th. I had Russell Henley in 2nd and Lucas Glover in 1st at 90-1 within the selections last week. So I'm on top of the moon. I don't know what you guys were all complaining about because Deep Dive Golf over here had a fantastic week, 1-2 finish, and the DFS core did awesome as well. We had Adam Scott in there in 7th, played very, very well. Brendan Todd obviously in 7th, and then JJ Spawn in the mid-30s. So the DFS core all made the cut, and it was a great building block for all of the WinDaily family.
Well, so, okay, Joel, let me interrupt. So that's why we had, I was so mad at Alex Smalley, because I had a lot of those guys in my DFS lineups. I just needed Alex Smalley to carry the day for the 6-6. But I will say this, your like you're obviously talking about betting as opposed to DFS. You're talking about your outright plays. They have been on fire. Anybody who's in this chat, who's in our Discord, or who is looking at our picks on WinDailySports.com or Tally site, whatever the platform is, David has been on a heater. This is not just me like boasting and saying, like, he has been on an absolute heater. And I'm hoping that the people in our Discord, where we largely talk about DFS, but David always puts his bets in there. I always put my bets in there. You see them in our Discord. I hope people are taking advantage of David's bets, because he takes so much time. There's so much detail behind each player, and you see that in his article. Definitely, if you haven't already, you got to check that stuff out.
And I'll quote, the number one rule of gambling: you never leave the table when you are on a heater. David's on a heater. Everyone needs to get on the table and ride this out. Let's cash these wins. Another great opportunity this week. And we're going to go through a draft to show how it works. Before we get to the draft, though, Spence, hit us up with the course breakdown. What are you looking for at TPC Southwind this week?
I think it's important to remember that TPC Southwind spent most of its time on the PGA Tour as a lower tiered event for many years. It only made the jump up to the WGC in 2019. Obviously, now it's part of the FedEx Cup Playoffs here. But while past data is still worth looking into since it tells some of what to expect, I think the last 4 seasons are going to be the best corollary you'll find because of the quality of the participants that are going to be here, and then the change from bent to Bermuda grass. In general, the venue is much larger than it may appear on paper. We see those factors come into play when looking into the 76 bunkers and 11 water hazards. That does help the course to grade as one of the 15 most challenging events of the season. Although with all that being said, I think the metrics are there for the taking when trying to facilitate our advantage for the week. The one key stat to me, and I'm not a trends person, and I always come on this show and I say I'm not into trends or any of that. To me, this is not a trend. This is just a statistical answer. 9 of the last 11 winners have led the field in strokes gained tee to green at this tournament. So to me, that kind of says that I'm trying to pinpoint players who excel in that area. I did add an extra addition of approach play. I think that gives us a pretty good blueprint for how we want to attack the event with our research. But, for me, it's more accuracy over distance here because there are a lot of sloping lies in the way the ball's going to roll off. I have heard that we are looking at a course that's a little bit wetter at this point of the year than we normally would get. But yeah.
Spencer, I'm sorry, Zach, like our chat is like world famous for being hilarious. And this is like the first time I don't think I could contain myself because he wanted you to punctuate that soliloquy with, all that said, Jason Day. I absolutely love that comment. Oh, that was great. And a great course breakdown. Did we cut you off from our laughter? Was that basically the gist of it, Spencer?
No, I mean, that's basically it. And yeah, I mean, anything that we can add Jason Day to, all the better.
All right. Well, we'll see if you pick Jason Day. Looks like it's time to get started, but I got to read. Listen, Byron's here, and Byron always has something very significant to say as it pertains to the show or the tournament. And I got to give him a shout out here because this is just such an appropriate and on point comment. He says, C is honestly the most handsome man on any golf podcast outside of mine, of course. Hey, listen, preach. Speak the truth, my friend. Appreciate the honesty. All right. Are we ready to draft?
And just to clarify, I think what he means is because I'm on one of his podcasts, he means me as the outside, and then you out. But that totally makes sense. Side of the point.
Oh yeah, no, I knew that's what he meant. Yeah.
Yes, you knew. Yeah,
props to you as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I figured you knew that for sure.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna pull the draft board up. We have a draft tonight. For those of you who aren't familiar with the rules, which is probably very few of you, I'll give you a quick recap. Snake draft. You all should be familiar with because we are in fantasy football season. Works the same as your fantasy football draft. We're going to go Spencer first, David second, me third, audience fourth. For clarification purposes, I did win last week and chose to go third. So I am the champion, defending champion coming into the draft. And I'm choosing to go third because I want to give the other people a chance, right? I don't want to win every week. It's more fun this way. Then see audience, you guys will have 2 in a row. Then we'll go back for the snake. The big thing to keep in mind is you have to stay within your DraftKings budget. So you can't take all the best players, which is going to be especially challenging this week as there is a bit of a smaller player pool. But without further ado, Spencer, you are on the clock.
Well, I mean, Joel, I have no problem saying this. You did win last week, and you decided to give me the number 1 pick. So I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you are the most handsome man that I know. So thank you, Joel, for that. Very nice of you to give me the number one pick. And with that pick, I am going to take the player that my model actually thought was the favorite to win at this event. That is Jon Rahm, 11,100. Obviously, you can make an argument from a tee to green perspective here with Scotty Scheffler being the number one player in that regard, and we're looking for tee to green players. But Rahm is one of only two players that graded inside the top 10 for projected tee to green scoring that also had top 20 metrics from the putting perspective. There's another name. When that name gets brought up on the show, I will mention who that is. But I really like Jon Rahm at a ball striking course here. I never dip into the single digit marks, and you can find 10-1 out there if you shop around, but I never really dip into that total for the number one guy that goes off on my card. I went to Jon Rahm as an outright bet this week. I really like him for DFS. I really like him for the outright market. I think he wins this tournament.
I kind of love that. I have 3 outrights that I have on my card, which I've already put in the WinDaily Discord. And one of them is Jon Rahm at 9-1. And I hate, Spencer, just like you, I hate taking odds that short, but we have to consider this is a shorter field. And 9-1 isn't that bad when you compare it to like 6.5-1 with Scotty Scheffler, or 6-1 in some markets. So I'm all aboard Jon Rahm. I mean, I think a lot of people think he's dipped a little bit. But if you look at the metrics, weighted tee to green, weighted approach, he's inside the top 3, inside the top 2, especially if you just look at the recent form. David, real quick before we get to your pick, what are your thoughts on Rahm?
I'm super annoyed at this whole situation. We were discussing off air before we came on that who would get the first pick, and Spence kind of put his bid in for the first pick, and then I was like, well, you're just going to put Scotty Scheffler in there, right? And then he goes, I'm not taking Scotty Scheffler. And as soon as he said that, I knew he was going for Jon Rahm. He was going to steal him from me. I tried to dispute it, but here we are. Look, the reason for me, I do think that those top 3 are obviously quite clearly the 3 best golfers in the world at the moment. Scotty Scheffler, we know, has had the struggles with the putter. He's got a new putter in the bag this week. Rory McIlroy hasn't looked that great off the tee lately, and I think driving actually is going to play a big part here. And Jon Rahm is second in this field for strokes and approach. It's basically him and Scotty Scheffler for the best approach players. We've seen that those have been the people who have found merit around TPC Southwind, and he by far answers most questions. And you're saving $1,000 on Scotty Scheffler as well, which just opens up a whole bunch more options further down the board. So really like the play. Mad at Spence, a little bit mad at Joel as well.
Joel, I assume, first of all, you're taking some heat here for basically handing the number one pick to Spencer, who, frankly, to David's point, usually Spencer just gets handed the number one pick if he's not already the winner. So I get David's gripe here. But real quick before David's pick, of these 3 top golfers, I mean, just from an ownership standpoint, they're going to end up, and we'll get Stephen Pilardi's article tomorrow at the WinDaily Sports Discord, but they're going to end up like 2 to 3 percentage points apart from each other, is my guess. And they're all going to be in that sort of 23 to 25, 26% range. Which of the 3 do you like the best to play, knowing that ownership is a wash? I mean, obviously, some are more expensive than others, but who do you like to play in DFS?
Well, you're probably going to find out in like a minute and a half.
Oh, that's true. That's true, actually.
But I will say, I agree that all 3 of them are very close. And because I think they're all very close and ownership is a wash, I do think the edge goes to Rahm for the sheer fact that he's $1,000 less than Scheffler. So if they're all pretty close, you can save $1,000. I think that makes the most sense.
Okay, so Joel, definitely hold that thought. David, it's your pick. Go ahead.
It is. So, yeah, I'm going to have to pivot a little bit here. Would have loved to have taken Rahm with the first pick. But I instead will go to one of the best value of the board. It is going to be a little bit chalky in terms of ownership, but I think it's just a clear misprice in terms of where he should be valued, and that's Colin Morikawa for me. He leads as one of the leading chances, opened up at 33-1 in betting markets. He's already been narrowed down to 25-1, even shorter in other spots. And I think that Colin Morikawa is a lot closer to a victory than a lot of people think. Bear in mind, last season was the first year that he had not won on the PGA Tour. He's desperate to change that. He's been playing very, very well as of late. Second at the Rocket Mortgage tournament before last. And in terms of strokes gained approach, he's third in this field behind only Scotty Scheffler and Jon Rahm over the last 3 months. The other thing I'd add is we are expecting thunderstorms, a few storm cells moving in on the Thursday. We're expecting quite a bit of rain as well on the Thursday. I think it's very, very possible that we get lift clean in place, in which case driving accuracy, I mean, these are narrow fairways anyway, 300-yard mark, you're looking at 28-yard fairways. But once you start bringing wind in, and the potential for lifting in place, someone like Colin Morikawa, who's 6th in this field, driving accuracy, elite on approach, bad putters have won here too with Will Zalatoris, etc. I think he ticks a lot of boxes. He's huge value at 9,000.
I totally agree, and I'm surprised his ownership hasn't started to skyrocket. I think it will creep up because he's definitely reasonably priced, obviously, but reasonably owned. And for the record, from a putter standpoint, he's gained in 5 out of the last 6, so he seems to have cured that to a large degree. Love the pick, Spencer. Before we get to Joel's pick, yes or no on Colin Morikawa?
I mean, I think David touched on this. My model does have him somewhat massively owned right now. Like I see him over 20%.
Oh, I see something different. Okay.
We'll see what Steven has tomorrow and he can clarify some of those situations. But I mean, look, I'm not a Colin Morikawa guy and my model liked him this week. So I think that's always interesting when he starts popping in my model when he never really does. And it's going to just come down to the ball striking answers that he can put together. And there's a handful of players that resemble that Will Zalatoris mold of how he won last year. I think Morikawa does a really good job of that sort of an answer.
Yeah, Colin 5th year last year as well. All right, Joel, it's finally on you. And I think we all know who you're going to take because this is kind of like your dude. I mean, honestly, we might have like a new nickname for you. We might just call you something else like Scotty or something because I got to think that's where you're headed.
I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to surprise you. Yep. I'm taking Rory McIlroy. Now, you're right. Scheffler usually is my dude. I usually take Scheffler every time. The reason I didn't give myself first pick is because I assumed Scheffler would have gone earlier and I still would have gotten Rory here. So I'm sticking to my guns and I'm going to go with Rory. It's a tough choice. Honestly, I wouldn't have been upset if I ended up getting Scheffler here. It's kind of a coin toss. The biggest factor here is the smaller field. There's less value plays out there. Saving the $600, one, is a big factor. But two, I mean, I know Scheffler's only been a non-top 10 once. It was his last outing in the last few months. Since May, Rory only has one finish. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Rory has 0 finishes, not in the top 10, since May 21st. So Rory has been spectacular. Even those tournaments where he's not really competing, he's still getting into the top 10. It basically takes him to have one of those tournaments with a hot putter. Rory can win this tournament again. I think one of the biggest driving factors that making me choose Rory here is that he does have a really good history at this course. I mean, in 2020, he has that T47, but other than that, T12, T4, T6, T5, he's done it time and time again here. So I think it's another spot for a Rory who's in good form to show up again and have a good result.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I don't know that I'm going to end up playing Rory of these big 3 that we've referred to. I probably agree with Spencer. It's Rahm's going to be in first place there, but I mean, I can't make a strong argument against Rory. Before we get to the audience picks, and we've got our 2 in here, I think. David, yes or no on Rory? I mean, again, we can't like everybody, so how are we playing Rory?
Rory's probably the third of the top 3 for me, actually. I prefer Rahm, then probably Scotty Scheffler, and then Rory. He hasn't had the best record here as well. I'll add that. He's got the new putter in the bag, and I'm just a little bit worried about the big hook that we've been seeing off the tee lately. He could find some water, find a bit of trouble, and I think if you're paying up sort of 11.5, I'd rather go down to Jon Rahm or go all the way up to Scotty Scheffler and look at those 2 routes instead, personally.
And Spencer, before we talk about team audience picks, rank the 3, Rory, Scotty, and Rahm.
Yeah, I'd probably put it in the same order that David put it in of Rahm, Scheffler, and Rory. Although the one thing I will say about that, and right now it's not necessarily coming to fruition inside of my model, I do think Rory ends up being the lowest owned. I mean, like that's what it shows right now, but I think it's going to be more substantial than we see on some of these percentages. Like I have about a 4 to 5% difference. I would not be shocked if you saw Rahm and Scheffler 25% plus, and you get Rory in this like 16 to 18% zone. So from a leverage answer in a 70-man field with one of the 3 best players in the world, with Rory being the natural pivot point there, I can't talk anybody out that who wants to play Rory this week. It makes logical sense.
Absolutely. And stay tuned for again, Sicily Kids ownership article tomorrow at WinDailySports.com and in our Discord. Well, speaking of ownership leverage, I mean, I think that's kind of where the audience went here, at least with one of the two guys. Now, Sam Burns is not going to be ownership leverage. He's going to be a chalky guy, but I don't hate it because you're getting really the price savings with him at 8,100. And we know how dialed in he can be on approach and with the putter. Sprayed off the tee a little bit, but then if you look at his course history, it looks like, well, that's not really an issue for him here because his course history is pretty great too. The ownership leverage comes with Patrick Cantlay, who the audience also nominated and ratified. I mean, listen, if you look at Patrick Cantlay's game lately, it doesn't look like a golfer that should be priced like this, right? But because of his pedigree, because of who he is, the price is probably right. The game's been off, but again, that's why the ownership percentage is probably going to be down. So to me, it actually makes it a pretty smart play. So I'm really curious, keeping all of those things in mind, where we stand on Patrick Cantlay. And so before we get to Joel's pick, David, I want to go to you on this one.
Yeah, I really like Cantlay this week, and I agree with you that I think there's a lot of other options that you can go to. Like a lot of people are going to like Hatton, a lot of people are going to like Fowler, a lot of people are going to like Tommy Fleetwood, Jordan Spieth. Like, so there's a lot of cheaper options there that are going to like dissipate some of that ownership as well. Obviously, we know that he's long and straight off the tee, and he can stripe it on approach. So that's a key recipe there. Sam Burns, I'm a little bit worried about. I think I understand the pick. It's the ownership for me that really becomes a bit of an issue because I do think he's going to be extremely highly owned. I've heard his name all week, like all over the place. So I just only see that ownership increasing, and he might be one where I just try and find a little pivot off and be a little bit contrarian because I'd rather be fading Sam Burns than trying to fade someone like Cantlay or Scheffler.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I think everybody should keep in mind, especially when you get to like 8K chalk and 7K chalk. I mean, there's 70 people in this field. Like, this is like where to me, this is really when you want to incorporate game theory, like to a very large degree. There's just no reason, especially with the talent 7K and above, even like in the 6K range. If you can find a guy, even if his form has been bad, then it's likely he's going to be ownership leverage. And I think that's the game you largely want to play here, not with every single one of your picks. But I mean, it does make sense. There's like 4 or 5 guys I can already tell in the 7K range that are just going to end up being chalky. Doesn't mean you have to avoid every single one of them, but you may want to consider that or just pick up one of those guys if you just really have conviction about them. And the same goes for guys like Patrick Cantlay as well. Joel, before I get to your pick, I need a yes or no from Spencer on Sam Burns.
I agree with David. I am out on Sam Burns this week. I think he's gotten way too much traction in the space. Anytime you put him on Bermuda, you hear the Bermuda Burns answer. And I know he's been touted on tons of different shows and tons of different portions of Twitter because I just see his name over and over again. But to me, I think there's better leverage spots to go to with how popular he's going to be.
All right, Joel, it's your pick. You surprised us with Rory. Are you surprising us again with your second pick?
Yeah, I am. I didn't think things would break this way, but I'm not allowing Scotty Scheffler to pass me twice. I can't. So
here we go.
I'm going to take him here, and I'm going to figure the rest of this draft out later.
So if it looks like you have 6,600 remaining for the rest of your guys. And listen, this is not okay. Here's the thing we have to understand that's different. And for those of you that are watching this, you probably know this, but I do want to remind you, you're getting 4 rounds out of everybody. So unless there's a withdrawal, which on Joel's team, we know there's going to be at least one, but conventionally for everybody else, we know we're getting 4 rounds. And listen, that lower 6K range, it's probably, it's the lower 6K range for a reason, but you don't have to worry about a cut on Friday afternoon is all I'm saying. So if somehow you can find the right mid to low 6K guys, if you have to jam 2 in your lineup, in theory, it could work out since you're getting the 4 rounds. So listen, I don't think any of us mind the Scotty Scheffler pick. I can't wait to see how this lineup plays out. And I'm probably going to steal it and put it in like a low entry contest just for fun. But David, I don't think we need to discuss Scotty, and I don't think we need to discuss this build because I don't think this is the first time people have thought of this, knowing that you've got a bunch of 6K guys that are decent and that they're going to get 4 rounds. So just a different type of way to build your roster. So let's just move right to you, Colin Morikawa, and who's next?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to Joel justifying Naismith and Sam Ryder at the end of this draft. But yes, we'll carry on. It's definitely, it's look, to reiterate that point, it's definitely a really viable way to build. I mean, if it was like Scotty Scheffler first, Rory McIlroy second at the end of the tournament, like nobody's going to be surprised. And if that's the case, then the build does get difficult with that sort of amount of salary getting eaten up. For me, I think now I'm going to have to go and get a bit of value because I think Spencer is going to look for a little bit as well. I mean, obviously Joel needs to in a big way. So I'm going to start with one of the value plays that I like, which is Harris English. I think there was Harris English's game really starting to turn around this year. He's got a very good record on this course. His approach play has been really trending very, very well. I just think he's excellent value at 7,000. I think he's a very viable top 10 option.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I didn't really look much at Harris English this week, and then I saw a friend of the show who was on this show just 3 weeks ago, Tom Jacobs, tweet some stats on him. And I was like, oh man, I kind of missed that on Harris English. So I'm not surprised at all, David, that you caught it. I don't have a problem at all. Like based on what I had already seen before the show, I don't have a problem at all with Harris English at this price. It seems to be like a pretty great play. Joel, I see you nodding your head like in agreement, but Spencer, let me just go right back to you before your back-to-back picks. Yes or no on Harris English?
I'm not going to play Harris English this week. I do think he's going to be popular. I know about the course history here. He is boom or bust to me, and that's not necessarily a bad answer, and you have to know what you're grabbing when you get him there. I am just going to go other ways with my build. I think it makes sense from an upside if you're shooting for the moon with him, and if you're running a model like I am, there is so much. I know the recent form looks good. Some of the early season form is going to be disastrous in the model. So if you condense it over just like the past, 24 to 36 rounds, it's going to look a lot better for him. I understand the play, but I am not going to use him this week. I know that was a long answer to give there.
No, not at all. But we do need an answer for your next two picks after Jon Rahm.
So I might be grabbing the withdrawal choice right now. My model really likes this guy, and I think we'd be in a spot that if he didn't get hurt, and I know he had a wrist injury, and now he has an ankle injury, and he withdrew from the Wyndham Championship before he could defend his title there, and now he's entering this contest with a lot of ownership around him, if we're being honest about this, but I really do like Tom Kim. I think he would have been in the mid to upper $8,000 range if he had more of a clean bill of health coming into this week. 13th here last season. The recent form has really started to turn for him before he experienced more of these injury concerns. But big riser in my model and expected weighted tee to green. And it's kind of the answer that I keep going to is I'm trying to find these pristine ball strikers that can win a contest. And it reaches a point where there's only so many names that I believe can actually win. It cuts off a little bit later than him. There's names further down the board, but that was my last outright ticket that I punched. So I'll just start my lineup with the two outrights that I have and build out from there.
Yeah, I'll say this about Tom Kim. I'm personally out on Tom Kim, and it's mostly because of the ankle injury where, I just don't know where it stands. I mean, it sounded like it was at least somewhat serious at the time, but, he seems, I guess, relatively confident, although in his interview on CBS during the golf tournament, during the Wyndham, he kept using the word hopefully. Obviously, he's playing. I have a problem with it only as it pertains to the tournament, just because it looks like he's picking up some ownership. So now I'm getting a guy that has an injury and he's picking up ownership. I'm like, all right, I'm happy to fade some guy that like maybe on Saturday and Sunday is like kind of limping around and not feeling 100%. So that's just something to keep in mind. The alternative there was, hey, if people are really afraid of the injury, he's only going to be like 7 or 8%. Well, then, okay, now I have a better reason to play Tom Kim. So again, we kind of have to wait to see how ownership plays out over the next 24 hours and we can come to a conclusion there. But Spencer, you got Jon Rahm, Tom Kim, and who else?
So I think it's an interesting point with the ownership discussion, and specifically for this build, I do want to try to find a natural leverage pivot right now. And I'm going to go to a golfer that has not looked good ball striking wise recently. I understand that. I think if this had a cut, maybe I would have more hesitation to making this pick, but because I'm guaranteed to most likely get 4 rounds out of this player, I'm going to shoot for the pure upside that I have for him in my model. So I'm going to take Tony Finau at 8,700. Third in my model in expected weighted tee to green. That was behind only Scheffler and Rahm. He also joined them as one of only 3 players that also graded inside the top 5 for me in weighted scoring. Numbers look really good from a long-term duration of time. I know the recent form has gone south with it, and that's what's going to push people off of him. But I think this is a good spot for him to bounce back at what right now I see sub 10% ownership.
Yeah, I'm seeing just over 10% ownership, but I mean, it's still lower than I thought it would be on of all names, Tony Finau. The putter has definitely failed him most as of late. I want to get Joel. I want to go to you and David just real quick, kind of a yes or no on Tony Finau, because I think I'm out on Tony Finau, but I completely get the justification on Tony Finau, especially if he's not going to be a popular play at a low price like he's at. So Joel, let me go to you first. Yes or no on Tony?
My answer is very similar to yours here. Like, as a different play in a big tournament, he makes a lot of sense. There's certainly upside, but he certainly won't be someone who'll be playing in cash or small lineups. Small
David? Oh, you're on mute.
Ditto for me. I mean, he's got fifth here last time. I'll point that out. So he's obviously got some semblance of course form coming into this. I agree, though. I don't think I'll be playing him in cash. I think he's a relatively decent play from a GPP standpoint, though. We know he's got the upside if he came out and finished in the top 5, but I think we'd be all that surprised. And if his ownership is going to be basically the lowest in all of that 8K range, he's certainly a good leverage option there.
I'll tell you right now, over the next 24 hours, this is what always happens. People see that and they're like, oh, I guess I can play Tony Finau. So just trust that that's going to creep up over the next 24 hours, and trust that when we actually get the ownership numbers, that there are going to be some people that go up or down just because they're going to see like, oh, wow, they're really low owned. So people are going to just jump on those people. But generally speaking, like I lean on Sicily Kid's article like in a big way. And I think the accuracy of our ownership article is, I don't want to say it's unmatched because I haven't done the compare and contrast, but it's really good. So I'm going to this is the tournament where I'm going to lean on that stuff even more. David, you're leaning on Colin Morikawa and Harris English. Who's next?
Yes. Yep. And I just want to touch on Brent Harris's comment there about 15% in the 70 player field being chalky. I would maybe up that a little bit. Just bear in mind, it's a smaller field, so you are going to get more of this condensed kind of ownership, right? Like instead of got 120 plus players to choose from, you've only got 70. So do bear that in mind. With a smaller field, you are going to see ownership spots. And I'm going to go someone who is a little bit chalky off the back of that, who genuinely is going to have sort of around that, I've seen at the moment around that 15% mark, maybe moving a bit higher, which would be Russell Henley at 7,800. I think Russell Henley is just really not getting the credit that he deserves for how well he's playing. Data Golf have him ranked as the 13th best player in the world right now. He was fantastic last week at the WinDaily Championship, went second. Great rec on the driving accuracy as well. We know that's a real asset of his game. That's going to be a big strength going in if we do see rain across those first couple of days. Live Clean Place comes into to play as well. He's had a 7th here previously as well. And some of the comp courses, like he's won at the PGA National, another course where there's plenty of water in play, you have to be a little bit more careful off the tee. And his iron play is very, very good at the moment. I mean, he's had just a stunning run, racking up top 20s all over the place. A lot of those have been in majors. He had a 4th at Masters, 14th at the US Open. His game has come a long, long way. And if he turns around and comes out and wins the St Jude, I just would not be surprised whatsoever. So I think he's got great upside at 7,800.
Yeah, and you might look at his recent form and not the metrics, but just the finishing positions. You might be like, oh, but there's a couple missed cuts in there. He must have had a bad Thursday or Friday. Well, good news. He gets to play all 4 rounds. And we know how hot he can get with the irons. So hopefully if that putter comes along, Henley makes a lot of sense. And that's why he's popular. But again, one of the maybe 5 guys in the 7K range that's going to be chalky. But if you have conviction about one of those guys, you certainly can play them. Joel, Rory, Scotty. Well, listen, just so you know, you can't take Victor Hovland here. You're going to have to go somewhere else. Where's it going to be?
I would have liked Hovland, but you're right. That won't work. So how about the guy who won the last tournament on the PGA Tour, Lucas Glover?
Love it.
If Lucas Glover has found a putter, which he's historically been horrible at putting, but recently he's had some really good putting weeks. If he's found a putter, he's a much better golfer than he's getting credit for. And so his putter seems to have turned around. He has a new putting stroke. He just won a tournament. The ball striking is there. I mean, the ball striking is up there with the elites. It is very good. If he makes a few putts and continues that hot putter, I think he's going to have another really good result. So 7,400, I can still afford him. I'm going to have to get real cheap from here on out, but I think he makes a lot of sense for this lineup.
I totally agree with that. And for the record, if you want to factor this in, he jumped to 49th in the FedEx Cup standings. So he's like teetering on the brink of like being inside or outside for the BMW Championship next week. And I do think that matters in this context. He just won. And so you would think, okay, the guy just won. He's probably going to like let his foot off the gas a little bit. Well, now he has like that additional pressure of knowing he can't let his foot off the gas, because if he wants to keep playing, he's got to stay inside that top 50. So I do think there's a difference there when you're evaluating a guy that's teetering on the brink of being in or outside of the FedEx Cup playoffs, coming off a win. I think that analysis is a little bit different than it would be somebody who just happens to be there because that's where he is at this point in the season. So just something to consider there. Audience is nominating right now, I'm assuming. Hopefully we're collecting some of our ratifications here because it'll make it easy on us. But Spencer, Lucas Glover, is it a yes or no? 7,400 seems reasonable.
I like Lucas Glover. One of the head-to-head matchups that I am on this week is Lucas Glover over Lee Hodges. You can find that over on DraftKings. I think Glover is a very, obviously there's a lot of names that are hot right now that are producing towards the latter stretch of the season. There are not many players that are hotter than Lucas Glover is. Like, obviously he just won an event, but it's not just that victory. It's all the top fives that he's been able to produce over the last 2 months. It's the ball striking nature that he keeps putting together. And if he can just make a couple putts, there's no reason that he can't continue this run. And if I keep saying that, putting gets somewhat neutralized here because it's a tee to green course, well, that's a Lucas Glover answer in a nutshell right there. So I like the Lucas Glover play a lot.
Yeah, and for the record, I'm on the same play. We were on the same play last week with Todd over Woodland. I'm on the same play, and it's minus 110. I think that's the shocking thing, and that's what actually gave me pause. Listen, I like Lee Hodges. I've repped Lee Hodges on this show, but the fact that Lee Hodges is only a minus 110, I mean, it's basically like they're co-favorites, if you will. They're tied here, so minus 110 each way. I'm really surprised by that, and sometimes you have to pause, and sometimes you just have to grab what seems to be a very great bet. So Lucas Glover over Lee Hodges, minus 110. Definitely like that over on DraftKings. And the C audience, well, we have ratified two guys. It looks like do we have controversy here? I see Yeager and Clark, and then I see Yeager and Straka. Do we know who it is, audience? It looks like Ivan had already determined it was Straka and Yeager. So it's definitely Straka. We can put him in there. Yeager appears to be the second pick. So unless I'm wrong there, somebody can correct me, but I don't have a problem with either of these guys. I like Sepp Straka a lot, actually. And I don't know what his ownership is looking like. It is not too bad. It's in that 10% range. I like both of these guys. I don't have a problem. Joel, let's go yes or no on both of these guys. Give me Sepp Straka and Steven Yeager. I'm
going to say yes to both.
Okay, David?
Definitely yes on Straka and maybe on Yeager, just depending how you deploy him. I think that he's a good leverage play. I see him at like 7% ownership. So I think he's a good contrarian play, and he was 14th last week. Like, it wasn't a dreadful week for him.
Yeah. Spencer, yes or no on Straka and Yeager?
I will say yes to both.
Yeah. Yeager, what's really interesting about him, I had him in a lot of my DraftKings teams. He lost 3.49 strokes putting round 4 only. But what's really crazy about that, he still gained on the tournament with the putter. So he actually had like a pretty good putting week, but he just was a complete disaster, particularly on the back nine in round 4 of the Wyndham Championship. So just something to consider there. If the putter is like a little bit more neutral through 4 rounds, like this guy can light it up with the ball striking. So I like both of these plays. Joel, I love this start. I'm just curious how you're going to finish it. So let us know. What's the 4th guy in?
So we're going to have to lean into some salary relief here with this pick. I'm going to take Sam Ryder. Sam Ryder's ball striking has been very good. He's the bare minimum price that he can possibly be. In the last 4 tournaments, even though he missed the cut at the John Deere, it was terrible off the tee, he gained 4 strokes on approach. He has since fixed his tee issues the last 2 weeks. Off the tee, he's gained strokes, and he's also gained over 5 strokes on approach in both tournaments. Sam Ryder has shown the ability to get a hot putter. It's been inconsistent, but he can get hot. And so if he combines the hot putter with his ball striking this week, I certainly think he can give us a good result at the bare minimum price.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with Sam Ryder. I don't think I'm going to get around to playing him, but I get the justification. Spencer, yes or no on Sam Ryder?
I mean, the thing is about it is, like, there's only so many options that Joel can actually go right now. I think if you're looking at the $6,000 names, I prefer Sam Ryder more than the other two. So I think he went with the right pick there if you're comparing.
Yeah, I want to be on Matthew Naismith in that flat 6K range. His putter is like, it's so bad. It's so bad. So I can't do that. David, yes or no on Sam Ryder? And let me give you the proper context, not for Joel's pick, but if you're dipping in, let's say, the 6,300 and below range, would Sam Ryder be in the conversation for you to throw into a lineup?
Look, maybe. I have him at like 3.5% ownership. Like that might not sound astronomical, but if like that's the contrarian kind of play that you're going, like we've got other guys who are like 1.5%, 1% who I'd like as well. Like, you've got guys like Nick Taylor and Brandon Wu down there, and I think they've just got as much upside as Sam Ryder potentially does. So if Sam Ryder ends up being like the spot where like the ownership, whatever low number of ownership it is, ends up condensing a little bit, you just got a bit of a risk of dupes maybe going into some of those large contests particularly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Nick Taylor, Ben Griffin, like these are guys that sound pretty, and there's other guys too. I don't want to do too much table talk because we might be, Joel might be scooping them up. And by the way, audience, like we got to consider what we want to do with our last two picks, but you might want to consider who you want, like who's the big gun that you want and how much money that would leave. You could probably just chatter before it gets to our pick at some point, but something to think about. You can go balance with the last two, or you can go kind of a high price guy and then in a 6K or low 7K guy. So maybe get those thoughts in order. But David, Colin Morikawa, Harris English, Russell Henley. We got some ball strikers here. Who's next?
Yeah, well, another good ball striker, obviously, because approach is going to be very, very clearly important at this tournament. And for me, Wyndham Clark, 12th at the moment for the last 3 months in strokes gained approach, just still priced like way too low. Like, I mean, genuinely, I said on the season recap episode last year that Wyndham Clark was one of the names that I named who was going to have a big 2023. That's obviously come true in a much bigger way than I expected, but he's had an awesome year. And I just don't think he's getting the respect that he deserves. I mean, I think that over the next year or so, we could be talking about Wyndham Clark like a top 10 golfer in the world, like on a regular basis. He's playing incredible golf. It's like he's not winning tournaments every 2 weeks at the moment, so everyone's kind of forgotten about him. But he's finished like a worst of like 33rd in the last 3 tournaments. Like he's still playing very, very good golf. Stripes it off the tee, plenty of distance to attack the par fives, but he's happy to use the iron off the tee as well. So I like that aspect too.
No issue whatsoever with Wyndham Clark. I co-sign everything you just said there, David. Joel, before we get to Spencer's back-to-back picks, yes or no on Wyndham Clark?
Yes, he was one of the guys I was flagging to take before I started Rory shuffling.
Yes, fair enough. All right, Spencer, Fee now. Plenty of upside in that lineup. Where are we headed next?
So I didn't realize, I know the audience has pointed this out, that every single player that I've taken so far has less than 9 letters or 9 or less letters in their names. So obviously I have to continue that trend right now with what I've put together. And I have shortened it in the list. So when I put this in, he will have less than 9, but I'm going to take Cam Young. Cam Young is very interesting in my model this week because I don't think anybody's going to want to play him, but there's only 4 players that graded inside of the top 10 for me. When you looked at total driving for this course and weighted proximity, that'd be Scheffler, Rahm, Cam Young, Tom Kim. So I think Young is one of those options here where you're going to get a lot more upside than meets the eye. There's a lot of players in this $8,000 range, Sam Burns being one of them, that is going to get the majority of the ownership. Even if I'm directly comparing them in ownership, didn't matter. I would rather play Cam Young. But now if you're telling me that I actually get a leverage pivot off of it, give me Cam Young for my first pick.
Yeah, and one thing I mentioned yesterday with Rick was you could play to be a little different with your lineup. And if you want to play a chalky Sam Burns, play Cam Young with Sam Burns. It's probably going to result in a couple different things. You're getting the ownership leverage from Cam Young, but you're also getting probably a different roster construction than most people. So like those are things to consider with a 70-person field. All right, well, Spencer, you got a 4-person field. Who's the 5th?
So I am going to go with a player that saw massive increases in my model when looking specifically for this venue in a strokes gain tee to green perspective here. I know the recent form has been all over the place. I'm willing to ignore that because it doesn't have a cut. And I know he hasn't been great here historically, but I'm going to take Siwoo Kim at 7,400 and just bank on that upside that my model has and hope that he puts it together because I like everything else that I have around him. I'm willing to take on that boom or bust nature with him. I see about 7 to 8% ownership right now, which I think is fine. But he's one of those golfers that if he pops in a big way. He's just going to have to be a little bit better in my model in this like scrambling GIR bogey avoidance sense of the answer that placed him outside the top 60.
So what's so interesting about Siwoo Kim with my experience is that I don't play Siwoo Kim a lot. I'm just like, anytime he's popular, I'm just kind of out. Not because he's popular. I just like, I kind of don't get it. And every time I do like end up playing him, it like never works out for me. And I feel like I'm missing something with respect to the booms that Spencer is talking about. So before we get to David's pick, David and Joel, I just want to get your reaction to that, because maybe I'm wrong. Like, because I know the metrics are good. I understand why he was popular last week, for example, but I just like, I never seem to cash in on the Siwoo Kim upside. So Joel, let me start with you. In or out on Siwoo Kim?
I have a similar result as you. I've seen him do well. It just happens to never be the weeks that I play him, and it's frustrating. So he's currently on my blacklist.
Fair enough. Joel has a blacklist, everybody. David, on your blacklist, is somebody you're not playing this week? What's going on with Siwoo?
I think he's an interesting leverage spot in GPPs. I have him at about 7% ownership. I think as well, a lot of people were on him last week and he didn't really produce the sort of form at a course he's been very, very good at previously around Sedgefield. He's obviously a past champion there in numerous top fives. So some people might be feeling a bit burned, and you know what that ends up doing is they go, well, I don't want to play that idiot again. You know, like if Alex Smalley was in this field, I'm sure Siwoo would be going, I'm not going near him again as well. So Siwoo kind of gets that treatment a little bit. He's accurate off the tee and his approach numbers are good. I'd say his record here is pretty dreadful. That's the only thing. It's Mr. Cut, 65th and 42nd. That relates to the lower ownership. It could just be that he hates this golf course, and I don't know which of those is the correct answer.
All right. Curious comment from Byron in the chat. I hope you're okay, buddy. Byron, Model Maniac. Hopefully you caught his show earlier, and I'm sure he's fine. But David, you get to pick next. I love your team so far, and you've got plenty of money left. I'm really curious what you do with your last two picks.
Yeah, look, I think the one thing that my team at this point is going to need is a little bit of a contrarian play. I think that I've got a little bit of chalk in certainly Colin Morikawa, but Henley's going to attract a bit of ownership in English somewhat as well. So contrarian play for me would be Corey Connors. Who you've got Sepp Straka sitting right there, who's getting a ton of ownership. Corey Connors in this field over the last 3 months is sitting 15th for strokes gained tee to green, 10th for accuracy, 29th for strokes gained approach. I just think his game's a lot closer than people think. And if we're thinking of a golfer who can absolutely stripe on approach, who can find fairways, Corey Connors is a really good answer to all of those options. His record here isn't dreadful. He's had a 28, 36 and a 30th. And then in terms of correlating courses, Innisbrook, he's got a decent record as well. He's had a 16th and a 21st there. And then at Colonial, he's an 8th, 19th, and a 20th as well. So I think his game's a lot closer than people think. And if I can get a bit of leverage from him, we've seen what he's done at the Masters, but the approach game and driving accuracy is really solving a lot of issues there for me with Corey Connors.
Yeah, I don't hate that pick at all. I think I'm like, listen, this is a ball strikers lineup, and I agree with you that I don't think people appreciate it. Same goes for Wyndham Clark to maybe a lesser degree, but I don't think people appreciate like how good Corey Connors has been and how good of a course fit he is. Because honestly, looking at his ownership, it just, I mean, he's a little chalky, but I don't know. I think Corey Connors is a great pick. Joel, before we get to your pick, quick yes or no on Corey Connors.
No.
A reluctant yes. Okay. No, fair enough. All right. I thought you were going to be like, sure. All right. So fair enough. I mean, I think you could have an opinion either way on Corey Connors. I think I'm going to play him, however. Joel, who are you going with next?
All right. I'm going to go ahead here. See it. I'm going to take your boy. I'm going to go back to the well, and we're going to go with Alex Smalley. Listen.
Oh, okay.
The ball striking is there.
Yep.
And that has been consistent. And it's a wonky putter. And if I'm going to try and rely on a wonky putter, I got Scheffler, I got Glover. This is the team that says if putting gets neutralized, this is the team that's going to win. So I'm going to play the theme of my lineup and take Smalley.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I mean, I'm not going to go back to him because of the putter issues. Like that does seem to be a pretty consistent problem. But we've seen people on this course with somewhat bad putting succeed here. So Spencer, I'm going to go to you. Yes or no on Alex Smalley?
I'm indifferent. I don't love the ownership around him. I'm seeing this approach on my model closer to 10%. We're not quite there yet, but it's steadily been climbing over the last 24 hours for me. So, I mean, there's other names around him if I'm trying to create leverage that I would rather play.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I can see why. I mean, I have his ownership lower, but I can see why his ownership might creep up because obviously the approach game looks great. Greens and regulation looks great. Accuracy off the tee, that all he's checking those boxes. All right, David, did I go to you on Alex Smalley already? Did we get a reaction from you? Because I am curious where you're at on him.
Similar answer. I'm indifferent. I'm not overly fond of him, especially as you said. I would have expected his ownership actually to get a little bit lower, just given he burned so many people last week, like yourself. So, yeah, I think that there's other options there that if I'm looking for something contrary, and anyone in 6K who's kind of attracting ownership of more than 5% is probably out for me.
All right. It looks like Grillo was definitely ratified. So if we put in Grillo, how much money do we have left? Just so the audience knows for our last pick.
Let me put that in.
Okay. Grillo is what, 7,100? I think
10,000.
7,200. 7,100. Okay. So 10. Oh, wow. 10,000. All right. So knowing that, let's go ahead and nominate, and let's just pretend nobody else was nominated, because I want people to know how much money was left for their last pick. There's a lot to choose from here with 10,000 left. So let's get some nominations in here. Xander is one of the nominations. Obviously, I know somebody mentioned Hatton, who's 9,700. I would imagine that's who we're picking between, although Ricky Fowler's down there at 9,500. Hideki, that's going to be like a no for me. All right, so maybe I'll make this decision. Tommy leaves a lot of money on the table, which isn't a bad thing at this tournament. All right, I mean, do we leave that much on the table, though? I'm okay with it. Let's see what happens. Tommy looks like I was actually going to go with Hatton there. But let's go with Tommy Fleetwood. I'll leave plenty of money on the table. We know our lineup's going to be different for several reasons, but that's the main one right there. Listen, I don't have a problem with Tommy Fleetwood. I'm generally pretty neutral on him. So let's go down the board here. And David, I'm going to start with you. How you feeling about Tommy Fleetwood this week?
I think he's very close. Tommy Fleetwood looks good. Like he looks good. He looks ready to win. The record obviously speaks for itself. 10th at the Open, 6th at the Scottish Open as well. Both links courses, I'll add that. But before that, 5th at the US Open and 2nd at the Canadian Open, which really he should have won. But obviously I had tipped up Nick Taylor, so that was just never going to happen because Nick Taylor was always going to win it for me at 66-1 instead. So yeah, look, I think he's a very, very solid play. I do worry about the ownership. I've seen his name a lot this week as well.
Fair enough. Spencer, real quick, yes or no on Tommy?
In on Tommy, and I do think leaving $900 on the table is perfectly fine.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, Joel, it's your pick. You can feel free to comment on Tommy, but let's hear who your last guy is.
I like Tommy a lot. If I obviously could afford him or built the line differently, I would have played him here. But I can't. And so it kind of also explains my last pick. I'll be honest, I have concerns with this pick, but I think he's the best of my options for what I have to deal with. I do think Nick Taylor has some upside. He's played really well over the last month or two. There's definitely a lot of risk. I think guaranteeing him 4 rounds certainly helps. He has the upside to have one really good day, which could help with points. So I'm going to go ahead and take Nick Taylor here.
I like Nick Taylor quite a bit here. That was one of the guys that in that range that I kind of like. Spencer, any reaction to Nick Taylor here?
No, I mean, I think it makes logical sense for where Joel's at with his build right now. Like, I mean, obviously that's not the question being asked with it, but I think 6,200 is too cheap for him, which, I mean, all of a sudden makes it value if you're looking at that part of the answer.
Yeah, David, it's your pick. I see you nodding. So it seems to me like if you're going down in that range, would he be your favorite in, let's say, the 6,300 and below range? And then you can make your pick.
Yeah, he'd be close. I'd maybe go to someone like a Tom Hoagie potentially.
That's who I like too.
I think that he's got some really good upside. And then Davis Riley. There's a lot of correlation here to Copperhead in the Valspar Championship. Davis Riley's had an excellent record there. And his approach looks like it's getting a little bit closer. So Nick Taylor's certainly in that conversation, though. I think he's had a fantastic year and he's got great upside as well.
All right. David, it is your pick. Who's your last guy in?
Well, thankfully, the audience did not take this player because I thought that this was going to scupper my plans of getting some leverage off Xander Schauffele with my final pick here. I'd left myself a little bit of a window to go and get him. And part of the reason, I guess, is just the rest of this build, trying to get a little bit of leverage. I have Xander as the lowest owned golfer of everyone over 9,500 and up, all the way through to the high 12Ks of Scotty Scheffler. So there's a lot of players there who are getting a lot of ownership, and it's not like Xander's been terrible. I mean, like he's been decent. He hasn't missed a cut since the Century Tournament of Champions. I mean, this is a no-cut event, but he's been extremely consistent. And if I'm getting some leverage here, if he finishes in the top 5, I think that he's a great option, particularly in larger GPPs.
One thing I noticed with Xander was that his history here isn't only like underwhelming, but like looking at the metrics, they're pretty bad, which just begs the question, like Xander, like he should be a good course fit here. So like is there any way for you to explain like why the metrics have been so bad for him? I mean, for a player the caliber of Xander Schauffele.
I mean, he was 6th here in 2020, so I wouldn't say it's been absolutely dreadful. And then in terms of other courses, TPC Craig Ranch is one of the other, there's only a few, but one of the other courses on the PGA Tour that uses oyster fairways. He was 5th there and he gained over 5 strokes on approach there too. So I think there's some decent correlations. And yeah, he's had a 6 here, so I wouldn't say it's absolutely dreadful.
Yeah, fair enough. And, you know, looking at it now, it's not as bad as I thought it was. Obviously, 1 year it was pretty bad, but other than that, he's been okay here. And I do like the ownership leverage play. All right, Spencer, who's your last man in?
I mean, I guess since I've gotten this far with the name thing, I have to continue it at this point. So there were a couple options that I was considering here. I think JJ Spawn would have made sense. I liked Vincent Norman. He probably has 9 R's in his last name to begin with the way that he spells it. So I couldn't take him. I'm going to wrap up this build. Him and I are on a good first name basis with this. I call him Bren. I'm going to take Bren Todd.
I don't mind that pick at all. I hadn't really come around to whether I was going to play him or not. But, you know, David, I got to think you like Brendan Todd a little bit here because he fits the mold of the golfer you're looking for. So is he a guy that if the draft had broken a certain way and you needed a guy in that range, you would have taken him?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have him at about 8%. I have him actually even a little bit higher than Alex Smalley. So that would be the concern. But he's playing very, very well. 7th last week at the WinDaily Championship and 2nd at the John Deere Classic. And he's had a 15th here previously as well as an 18th and a 12th. So, yeah, look, I mean, he fits that profile in terms of driving accuracy. Very, very good short game as well. So with these 4,500 square foot, extremely small greens, even if he isn't absolutely striping it, I've got a bit of confidence he can get it up and down and kind of keep that momentum going. And he prefers these courses which are a little bit of a higher score. There's not going to be an absolute birdie fest, and he kind of prefers those sort of layouts as well. So ownership would be the only concern. But look, I mean, Spencer's drafting guys like Tony Finau and Cam Young, so that's not, in terms of his build, going to be an issue whatsoever.
All right. I like these teams. I think people in the chat should steal some of them. And I know we're going to tweet them out. And you can kind of, when we do, which will probably be tomorrow, early afternoon, you can rate which team you like the best, which team you want to steal and put into a lineup. But Joel, it's looking good.
This is it. While you're at it, feel free to hit the like button. Give us a follow. You'll see the lineups come out. Let us know who you think is going to win. We'll come back. We'll track it next week, and we'll have another draft. But we're not done yet. As I bring the draft board down, we are going to give you our first round leaders. You come back Thursday night, you will be a rich, rich man. Spencer, who are you looking at for first round leaders this week?
I'm keeping my card very simple in any sort of outright market or first round leader market here. I'm going to take John Rahm at 20-1, and I grabbed Tony Finau at 40-1. That was the best price that I saw in the market on him. I thought it was just a good number grab.
I like it. I like it. David, how about you? Who are you looking at in the first round leader market?
So I've actually gone for 5 this week, but in saying that, they're all a little bit longer in terms of the odds. So going from shortest odds to longest, Colin Morikawa, you can get him at 33 to 1. Russell Henley at 40 to 1. He loves a first round lead. Very, very successful in that market and was last week again as well. So 40 to 1 is a great number around him. JT Poston at 50 to 1. Sepp Straka at 50 to 1. But my actual favorite first round leader play is the one that's at the longest odds, which is Harris English, already mentioned on the show, 66 to 1. He's been the first round leader here twice. He's won at this course. He's coming in very, very good form. The game looks like it's coming right. And I think that 66 to 1 number going off in the morning is far too generous. So I am eating that up all day.
I love it. I really love it because I was going to give him as one of mine as well. So when there is overlap, that is usually a good sign. We're seeing some more things. I have a couple. Harris English is one of them as well. My longest odds pick was a tie between Harris English and the three-way tie, Emiliano Grillo, who was drafted on the show, and Lucas Glover. So if you're looking for a 50 to 1 shot, those are the three guys I like there. The two other guys I want to mention here are Benny Ann at 41, who's just been pretty hot recently. Another guy that can have a really hot round one, but my favorite first-round leader play this week, and it's someone who maybe wasn't even mentioned on the show, who I still like a lot this week, is Ricky Fowler at 35 to 1.
Nice. Yeah, Ricky Fowler. We could have rounded out our team with Ricky Fowler. He's definitely in the conversation, likely to pick up some ownership as well. Joel, what's unfortunate here is I have 5 first-round leaders as well, which is kind of a lot for a 70-person field. But for the record, just like Spencer, I have a very low outright card. I only have 3 guys on my outright card. Check that out at the WinDaily Sports Discord. But I want Harris English now. So I'm like, I feel like I have to add him. So I'm just going to have an honorary pick just to co-sign what David and Joel just said. But here are mine. I've got Rahm at 18 to 1. I think maybe Spencer, did you get him at 20 to 1?
I did get him at 20 to 1.
Okay. So, shop your lines, obviously. The Rahm, I think it's coming from DraftKings, but admittedly, I'm not 100% sure. I looked at FanDuel for the first round leaders or Caesars or MGM or any of those places. So Sam Burns at 40 to 1. Sepp Straka, so we're simpatico there. I think I've got him at 40 to 1 here. And then my long shot is Andrew Putnam, just because of his course history. And by the way, his game does, the approach and the putter can get hot for Andrew Putnam, but his history here, he's 6,400 in DraftKings. I mean, if you want to lean on history, like he would be your guy at 6,400. He's 70 to 1 to be your first round leader. But I'm going to also mention a guy that I don't think has been mentioned on this show. He's also 50 to 1. Ladies and gentlemen, not necessarily conceived as a or thought of as a ball striker, but he figures it out and he finds a way, and the game is really starting to come on, both from a ball striking and a putting standpoint. Your first round leader, it's Tuesday, by the way. So I'm telling you what the feature is. Your first round leader at the FedEx St Jude 2023. It's none other than at 50 to 1, Cam Davis. You're welcome, everybody.
That was easy.
It is. It's that easy. Because the way it works is you take all the money you have, all of it, the whole savings, everything, you put it on Cam Davis, and then by Thursday evening, you have 50 times that much money. So that seems like a great investment strategy, if you ask me. What do you think?
I mean, if you haven't done so already, it is a good investment strategy there. If you have not seen what Cam Davis has done recently, it has been staggering with the ball striking numbers. Like, he gained 7.9 at the Wyndham, 6.6 at the 3M Open. There is so much upside with Cam Davis. Like, I'm surprised that nobody took him in a lineup in our contest, because that was when I entered. That was a name that I was envisioning myself taking, and just with the way things went, I didn't put him into my build. But I really like that play, Sia.
Did you hear that? With a straight face, he said that is a sound investment strategy. Spencer doesn't joke around, folks.
I will say one of my biggest takeaways from our show tonight, outside of that was really funny, but one of the biggest takeaways that I got was we started the show saying, hey, we have like our work cut out for us. There's only so many players. Are we going to be able to draft 4 teams? Are we going to find the value? And it ended up not being in this show at all. And then we're referencing guys that didn't get drafted that were like, hey, that guy was good. I'm surprised he didn't get drafted. So what that tells me is that the ownership might be a little bit more spread out than we're anticipating. And I don't feel like I'm going to be as nervous about like fading certain chalky guys, because I think even though it's a smaller field, they're all good players. To make this tournament, you have to be pretty good. So I think every guy in this field, you can make a case at least to be able to be played. So,
well, that's true, but the reverse of that is true as well, because the pivot that's low owned that everybody thinks is trash. Well, I mean, he's in this field too. So like, you know what I'm saying? Like because I agree with everything you just said, Joel, but like those guys that are getting ignored, like if you think, especially with long-term form, a lot of them deserve to be in the 7K, 8K, 9K range, and yet they're still 7, 6, 8% next to a guy that's going to be 18%. So those are things to consider as well.
For sure. It's, one of the biggest takeaways to see his point is it's a lot more game theory involved this week than maybe previous weeks in terms of playing ownership, finding values at different spots and things like that. So we're going to have fun with it. It's going to be a really fun week. Keep a lookout tomorrow for the lineups. Let us know who you think is going to win. We'll come back and check it out and crown the champion next week. See ya. Am I forgetting anything?
David says he's going to be the champion. Well, I'll tell you what. It's Byron who says these are the 70 best guys on tour. They play pretty much. He says play pretty much anybody. Interesting comment, and it might be a valid comment, particularly from a game theory standpoint. So I think that's the last thing we should leave on. We're going to end the show there. Just kidding. Sports.